Hello and welcome to the Social Recruiting Show. I'm Katrina Collier. I'm, of course, author of The Robot Proof Recruiter. And I know, I have to show it every week. And a candidate engagement facilitator and speaker. I'm, of course, joined by my very talented talent acquisition professional co-host, the one, the only, Colin Martin.
Oh, hola.
Hello. And this week, we have a very exciting guest in the name of Neeta Sharma, who will be talking about, without the right people, it ain't happening, because we're talking about startup recruiting. So welcome to the show, Neeta.
Welcome to the show, Neeta. Super excited to have you on the show. Just before we really get into it, just one little shout out to Arthur in the legal team at Remitly, watches the show every week. Want to encourage him to comment. Anybody watching, comment. Feel free to join in the show.
If you really want to comment, go watch it on my Facebook, because it's public, so you can comment away on my Facebook. And could we just give a little shout out to the former co-host, the one, the only, the amazing Audra Knight, who currently might have been overrunning because Audra does everything in halves. So get better. Okay, back to you, Neeta.
Back to you, Neeta. So let's kick it off.
All right.
How did you? Yeah, we can hear you perfectly. Okay, perfectly. So now you need to tell us.
Wait, but thank you for having me.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. I've worked with Glenn, just wanted to say that. Oh, it's the other way. And just met Katrina, so I'm excited to talk to you both.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That works. You're in the middle.
That's good. A good bit of coordination. Well, listen, seriously, it's super cool to have you on the show.
Cool.
And let's kick off like we always do. How did you get into the wonderful world of recruitment?
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay, so interestingly, I studied commerce and finance in school, worked in finance, decided I hated sitting behind a desk with numbers. And so I became an executive assistant to the president of one of the largest telephone companies in Canada called Bell. So I was his executive assistant, and I started, having an opportunity to meet all sorts of people, and was like, marketing seems cool. HR seems cool because I like people and I'm a bit of a creative brain. And then I went on vacation, and a girl at the time, we were probably like 24 years old, happened to be on vacation with us and said, you should be a recruiter, because she was actually a BA for an accounting firm. So thought about it. I love people. I love seeing how things operate. Went and I interviewed, and they were like, no, we're not going to bring you on because you're like way too corporate. There's just something about you. You're going to hate it, because it was an agency and they didn't think I had a sales streak in me. And I was like, okay. And it was a very good sell technique, because I called them back the next day and I was like, I want to work here. And they were like, making less money than I was for an executive assistant, which, by the way, is like a job where you just learn how to be more resourceful than you would ever know. Like my first day at the job, the president, who used to be an ex-military guy, comes up to me. He's like, you're doing a SaaS implementation? No, not SaaS, SAP implementation. And you need to get me an Austin Powers costume and the girlfriend for my wife. Right.
Awesome.
So you learn to be super resourceful, because I was like, what is SAP? And, it was an experience where I got to meet Richard Branson, who used to come into the offices regularly. I'm sitting at my desk on a call, 23 years old, and I'm on the phone and I say, I'm just Alex EA. And he walks up to me and says, you know what? Well, yeah, he walked up to me and I was like, oh my God, do you need anything? Do I need to get you a charger, water, whatever? Yeah. And he said, I just want you to know, you're not just an EA.
Just anything.
Yeah. He's
cool.
like, you are Alex EA. So I think that was a pretty defining moment in my career to realize.
Have you ever noticed, Neeta, when you go into a restaurant, if you ever walk into a restaurant on your own, and I travel all the time on my own, I get this just one.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, one. Yeah. Just you?
Yeah.
No. Me. Like, really? Yeah. And I don't think I've heard that from Richard Branson. It just irritates me. How dare anybody put the word just before anything?
But you know what? It doesn't matter what other people do. It's like what you think. So even if someone's like, you're just an EA or you're just
you're not.
Professor. Yeah, but you can't let that get to you. It's about yourself. No. Like you don't want to say, I'm just this. So, you know, it was a pretty interesting part. I actually ended up getting, I mean, like they very nicely let me go from being an EA of this like startup that we had started. But thinking back, you know, I was 23 years old, probably wearing clothing that was not like, it was professional, I thought, but it wasn't, you know, like it wasn't anything bad, but, you know, just like the proactiveness, like you know, I was like very thoughtful. I probably didn't even realize I was like fired until recently. But I don't even think I was fired. They were just like, this is like the president of a company and you're like, you need to hit someone's standards. You have to like level up, right, to be able to do that. And I didn't know. So
did they give you any guidance with that? I mean, they gave you the job and then just let you sink?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't. Well, yeah, because it was a startup environment. Because like we.
Oh, okay. So they didn't know how to hire.
Yeah. Well, I know. So I was actually supporting of this like super large company, and then the president started a subsidiary with like 15 of us. So I mean, it was like I was building an office. I was, you know, putting HR structures together. I had just come out of school, so you know, there's no way. So like, was I good for the time? Sure, but they needed something bigger. But anyways, that's not the point. So the point was just like, you know, having someone say just, right. And like, I'm Indian. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. My parents are like amazing. I'm a super family person, but like in our culture, it's usually you're like a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. So, you know, to study commerce and finance, think that I might go down that accounting route. And I worked in like a back office finance role for, you know, I knew like that wasn't for me. And then to go to be an executive assistant, there's like, you know, cultural things, not that I was thinking about it, but when someone says you be whatever you want to be. So anyways, I went to Dominican on this girls trip and a girl was there who worked for tech systems interview. They say no. And I'm like, call them back. I'm like, it was like really little money, right? Because you get paid commission and stuff. So it's pretty like big step down considering I was in EA to this, you know, executive. So call them back and I'm like, I want it. I really do. And they're like, why? And I'm like, well, I just like love people. I know that about me. I'm the youngest of 52 cousins. I love people. And like I love like how things work, right?
That's cool.
Oh, it is crazy. Yeah. Like my cousin's kids are older than me. Like that's how big. I don't even know them all, but anyways, different.
So you started in the agency world and then ended up in startup? Is that what happened?
No.
How did you end up in the startup world?
No.
Okay, so I'm 38. So I mean, I started recruiting when I was like 25. So 2 years in agency. And doing really well. Well, hold on. You said, why did I get into recruiting? I was like, I love people and I love how things work. I am like the curious person. Like, so yes, I'm passionate about recruiting, but I'm a person who's like passionate about a million things. Like if anyone who follows me on Instagram is watching this now, they probably wouldn't know I'm a recruiter or HR.
That's a good point.
Right. Like I have a lot of passions and I think given that recruiting fulfills this like intellectual curiosity because you're either learning about an industry.
We've had the curiosity thing come up on quite several shows.
Yeah.
And we're always like, because to me it's key. If you're not curious, therefore you won't use these in proportion either, like the 2 ears, 1 mouth, because you won't ask questions. But I find it quite tough. Like, how do you hire for that? Like, we have this constant thing, don't we? How do you even find people who are naturally curious? I mean, we 3 are naturally curious.
A nice segue into the title of the show, is it not, Katrina?
It is
Can we
indeed.
flash
And
that
actually,
up?
That is
a nice
can I just say to Lennox that we are going to get to your question about the right people, because of course it's talking cultural fit. We are talking very much startup world. So actually it's probably slightly more crucial that if you've got the wrong person in a corporate, you can kind of cope with it. The wrong person in a startup.
But not really, because I just to go back.
Well, there's more people carrying more load though, aren't there?
Well, I come from a very corporate background. So like 10 years after agency, I went to one of the largest pension funds in the world, joined in-house for less money, and started learning about, private equity, public market investment, real estate stuff. And it was a high growth company. Then I left there. I just learned a lot. It was with people who were just, teaching a lot, learning from the best, then went on to a bank, number 4 bank in Canada. There's only 4 banks. But I was heading up the technology sector and very corporate. But I got I got an opportunity to be chosen as a subject matter expert and became a BA within this large environment to implement a non-SaaS platform. It was like a 2-year project, crazy. And I loved the BA part, and I thought I was going to stick there. I was like, end of recruiting career, I'm going to be a BA. So large company. And then I got a call from a recruiter who was recruiting for Boston Consulting Group. It's like the one of the top.
Yeah, BCG. Yeah.
So it was a dream to work there. Always, I thought I would be a consultant because I have this, curiosity. My grades didn't get me an interview even. So I ended up being the head of recruiting for Canada. And it was completely different than what I expected, because although they consult with all of these companies, the Canadian offices were quite small and they needed a lot of structure put in. And every person who comes into a small company leaves a different impact, right? So I was the person who came in and started formalizing the way things were being done, given all of the other corporate experiences I had. And particularly the pension fund I had worked for was 150 people when I had joined, and 3,000 when we left. So I built out a Canvas program and just learned from people who were true HR business partners and got to learn a lot from them. So it wasn't just recruiting. So I moved to London. After BCG, my boyfriend at the time was living here, and I moved over. We got married, and I was like, "What do I do? Do I go back to the corporate world?" And long story short, I interviewed somewhere with an investment firm, and I'm not going to name them, but I'm really thankful about this lady because she, had great interviews, did well. Final interview with the main partner. He was British. I was 32 years old, 33 years old at the time. Probably looked a bit younger. I have a kid now, so I've aged a little bit, but I go through this interview.
We can't tell, as we discussed before we came on air. You're currently sitting in the dark. You could be 90, you could be 19. We cannot tell.
But anyway, so I interview with these guys, and I'm like, I know I have the job. And then I meet the final interviewer, and I'm like, great interview, but something was off. A day later, I find out I don't get the job. I didn't ask for feedback. And she just said, being a young female Indian person trying to apply for a British company, I wouldn't do it if I was you. It's just, She was like, you should, okay, we're not going to get into this. This isn't the point of this. Right? But
except for that's fascinating.
Right. It is. But
that's pretty blunt, man. Seriously.
No, well, she did. She called me back.
Was she Indian herself, or
no, very, very British. And I will not, my friends, they all know who the company is, but I wouldn't ever reveal it, because she was doing me a favor, because she was just like, I don't want you to think these, it was like a 5-month process of getting to know a lot of people, and I felt the energy, and you can't change people's perceptions. So you either walk out of there being like, what she said to me is, you should not apply for a small British business, apply to companies that are global or larger, or, like I could go work for Virgin, Richard Branson, but you know what I mean? Like that, would have the values. I probably wouldn't want to work for a company that is either sexist or racist or ageist, right? So, a good thing. But anyway, so
what does the size of the company have to do with that?
Well, I think it has to do with ownership and like how much do the values of the owners go through. And I didn't feel these values from the other employees I worked with. It was only this particular. It was a family business, but they're like very.
So was that the catalyst for you spinning into being freelance and working?
No, it wasn't, because this happened prior to me moving. So I hadn't actually moved, and the opportunity to move with BCG was like a pretty big option. But I like to think in a lot of aspects of my life, I want to be ahead of the curve. I just enjoy that. I like learning about things before they're big. I don't have no idea why, but
because I'm curious.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, like, I think I started learning about the investment world before it was big in Canada. It probably was already big in London, for example. And the tech world, I mean, you just kept hearing about it. And I was like, I know I hire really well. I've been in these fast growth companies. I'm going to go work for one tech company. So, I mean, I moved to London that week. I went to a bunch of TED Talks, was just networking, and shout out to Min Teo, who's one of my girlfriends who's worked at many tech firms. She introduced me to the first startup, and so all I did for them was hiring, but we got a lot of exposure to other things. They were doing a Series A, a Series B, so you have to like add information, and if you're a curious person, you'll learn about the process. But I wasn't like actively involved in anything like that. But they were like client number one. Probably 10 people when I joined and about 50 when I left, and that was kind of the model I decided I wanted to do. So I started working with a number of startups in London, helping with hiring, but it got to be like a lot more than that. And along that journey, I came across Instanda, which is a startup that I've been with now for 3 years. And I just joined them full time on Monday, which I don't even think a lot of the employees know yet because we haven't communicated it out. But
Monday just gone or Monday coming?
Monday that went, but like we had,
congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, they know now.
So I'm joining as the CHRO, which is great. I think it kind of aligns with like future vision of what I want to do, which is go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Can we grab to their question? Because I think it's quite important now that we've got there. So Lennox is saying like the right people. What exactly do we mean by that? People who fit well with the company culture or what? Okay. So I guess it's, to me, going back to the point I was trying to make, maybe I didn't make it well. If you haven't got the right people in a startup, because more people are carrying more load in a startup, in my humble opinion, than in a corporate where there's thousands and thousands of people. So how are you making sure? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, that is what I meant. But so one about the load, for people who have not worked in a startup, it's not the amount of work you do in a corporate or a startup is the same. And that really depends on who you are. If you're a person that innately works hard, you're going to work hard and take on X amount of work. It's the type of work.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I didn't mean the hours. Yeah. I meant the multiple hats on. You need to be more flexible.
Yeah, the mental burden is really high because I mean, there's like 4 things that hit my desk a day, and I'm like, I have no effing idea. I don't even know where to start, right? Like, that's all that goes on. Like everything from like policies to something new coming up, or like, what do we call this role? Like, I don't know, but let's figure it out, right? So that part is mentally draining versus when you're in a corporate, you have answers, there's structure, you figured it out. People have been there and done it. And the difference is the culture is this. In a startup, what you need out of your people changes very quickly. So, what you need in year 1 and 2, as an example, is very different than what you need in 3 and 4, because you need crazy people to join you for the first 5 people, right? Like who's going to join a company called Joe Blow and be like, I'm going to come work for you for little money. But like, you just have to have this passion. You have to be smart. Every great founder.
But it's also that fear of like, I've always wanted to be one person. I've never wanted to build a team. But I know whoever I hired as that second person would be so critical. And that's why I agree with the to the 5. You have to do that because it's like you're fighting as well from the owner wanting to hold on to everything. Because I'd be
Isn't there the side as well that perhaps the scaling of the teams is slightly determined by the product or proposition, and that can kind of accelerate really quickly, plateau, accelerate really quickly, plateau, and coupled, as you said, with the kind of investment rounds and that. I mean, there's a couple of things you touched upon, which is like resilience and that kind of curiosity and growth mindset. Are there any other sort of attributes that you think are really useful to an individual in that sort of founding team, Neeta, that you've experienced?
So the first 5, I haven't helped any company come up with their first 5. So I can't speak to that. I've joined companies like when they're at least 10. That's probably the smallest company size. So I actually don't.
That's about normal, isn't it? That they don't really take a recruiter on until about there. Because the one I did was from 20 to 70.
Well,
they weren't ready.
I've been approached by a lot of smaller startups, but I just haven't taken them on. And I wouldn't know, because I think that's a really personal thing, right? Like, who knows? Yeah. But I think like once you hit 10, you need people who ideally, like, this doesn't happen, but if you are going to be smart about who you're going to hire, you need people who understand emotions and learn from those emotions. You can't have people who are emotional, because if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're going to keep going around in circles and circles and circles. And that is going to fuck up everybody and everything, right? Like, it's just, sorry.
Sounds like life lessons at work.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I think it's really important. I'm doing like a course online right now called The Life Book, which is about looking at 12 foundations of life and coming up with like a premise, a purpose, a vision, a strategy. And I'm on category 4 right now. The first category is health and wellness, and you move on. But like, we're at this point at this particular startup I'm with, which is just doing amazing. And I don't even think the employees themselves realize how amazing of a point that we're at, but it's like, do or die. But like, I'm listening to this and it correlates so much. Like, you want people who are excellent and what are, attributes that make up excellence. And listening to this, there are things, you need people who care about themselves, that they're confident, that they're know how to manage their, their emotions, that they're able to look.
So they're self-aware. Self-awareness.
So, but what's really hard, like the irony is I'm in this world of tech, and that's when self-awareness, like, sorry to say it, but like, you look back at our ancestors and the basic, like, they knew how to live life because they were not relying on technology. And here we are relying on technology, and what's being lost is more and more of those like basic attributes that are like so important. And I don't think people actually realize that, because if you have that, like, 1, you feel good in yourself, and 2, you know how to communicate, and 3, you are a solution-oriented person, which like back in the day, if you needed food, you need to like jump a tree and grab an apple because I'm vegetarian, or kill something, which I didn't do because I'm vegetarian, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you need to like use your brain.
I don't know, that carrot's going to argue that you're shortening its life, I tell you. But you do know that I wrote that, which is all about exactly what you're saying. Like, it's all about bring the human back in, remember all of the human side of the way you engage. You're absolutely right. Can I just say, we've got a funny point here that I just have to share. Oh, I'm just sorry. I've just seen who else was watching. So Michael Cox. Hi, Michael. Lovely to have you back.
Hey, Michael.
First sign of a wrong fit for a startup candidate asks, what will my job be? That's a good point.
Yeah, good point.
Mr. Engineer, you're not Mr. Engineer. You tuning in for India? My God, shouldn't you be asleep? Anyway, do tech people from startups think that going to mid-large size companies with similar culture as their next step? Is that their next step, or do they stay? Tech people from startups.
So you know what? I think all of these questions are so like, people think the word startup, it's like all startups are the same. That would be saying that all companies are the same, and that's absolutely not the case, right? So the first startup I worked with, I mean, like, I was like, whoa, coming from a corporate environment and people are wearing pajamas, and I was like, how do I dress? And the startup that I'm at now is like,
that would be weird.
Yeah.
That would be very weird.
Yeah, but I shouldn't say everyone. I'm like, you could show up in pajamas or you could dress.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. And it was a great place. But what I'm saying is, like every company, like, you can't compare Google to Hewlett Packard, for example, right? Even though they're both trailblazers at their own time, you just cannot compare that. So asking the question, like, it's not about what does someone look for, and like, it's like asking a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, I have a son who's turning 2. I'm never going to say, baby, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's going to be, what skills do you want to use when you grow up, right? Yeah. Like, you love cars, so like, do you want to work with cars? Or you love music. He dances all the time. He also loves cleaning, like women. He like vacuums. If you have a kid down the line, he's the one for you. But like, but like, I think it's important. So when you're looking for a job, it's not like, one, who will hire me? Because excuse me, you're not just somebody. It's do the things that I want to do. Am I going to be offered that where I'm going? And if the answer is yes, cool. Am I going to be offered 100%? If you are, you're extremely lucky, and that never happens. I can tell you, I am so grateful to work with this startup. I mean, it's headaches, but I still love it. But am I doing 100% of what I want to do? No, I'm doing stuff I used to do 20 years ago, like, so I'm doing like 50%, but doing that extra 50%, like, man, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm doing things I haven't done, and I'm looking at my long-term vision. Like, what do I want to be? Like, I want to be in the health and wellness space, but I want to stay connected to, tech companies.
Does that relate to Glenn's beard oil? Is that where that came in?
Yes.
Is that on the Instagram that I've not looked at yet?
No, it's not on there. No. Oh. I don't. Yeah, but no. Anyway, different conversation.
No, this is important. We're going to have a beard oil sponsor. I'm determined.
One thing I wanted to ask, though, actually, because you mentioned it earlier, Neeta, and I wanted to kind of come back to it. It seems like a nice segue. You said that you felt you interviewed people well. How do you have to approach interviewing for a startup as opposed to perhaps an enterprise company that has a nice set matrix of questions that you ask, competency-based, etc.?
Right.
Interviewing for a startup is a little bit more, you have to rely on intuition, I would imagine, right? A little bit more intuitive.
Well, I think it's completely like, the person who tells me they're going to use AI to fill the roles in a startup is, I'm going to say that company is failing within 5 years. 100%.
Send them my book.
Yeah.
Just send them my book.
Yeah. Right. It might work in a corporate environment, like where there's 100,000 people working. If they're, they don't need to interact, they're operating machinery, or they're wearing headphones and operating a plane, things that are those kind of roles that are like doing fine. You can use AI maybe, but when I'm working for a smaller company, and I would say like anything 150 and below, or anything with infancy teams, right? If you have a team, if you have 4 teams that are 25 each, cool, go use that AI technology. But if you have teams that are like under 10, you got to consider who are the people, what are their personalities, like what are the gaps, what are we missing? Is the person who's coming in going to offer some skills to help elevate the team, right? Like, everyone within a team has some skill that elevates one another. And a lot of people don't realize that, right? Like, if you do one thing really well, like, if I was a great recruiter and people are like, you're the best CHRO, but guess what? How much do I know about UK HR? Nothing. But what I do know is I can reach out to people who can advise me, and I have good judgment, and I'll make a decision. So you don't need 100%. You need people who complement one another, and you have to, very importantly, have a leader who sees the long game and understands the value of one, training people, equipping them for success, not wanting them to fail, and also recognizing, when it's time to go. So what I was saying is, like, someone like me, like, I should not be with a company that's like in not innovating ideas. Like, I will get bored and you will not get the best of me. And you should not take it personally when somebody leaves, a company, because they need to grow, and you always upgrade, right?
Obviously, you have an element of self-awareness to have got to the point that you understand that about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that don't. They kind of actually haven't. Did you use any tools to get to that point? Did you, like, I was thinking about when you're talking about your teams and how the teams complement each other. Was there technology then that was used, like DISC or something along those lines, where it said it has its place as a helping tool? Did you do anything like that, or?
So I've done that before with larger companies. When I was at BCG, we did assessments. Glenn and I have actually researched a number of assessments along with another gentleman on our team, Andy. Like, we were looking at a variety of different things, but like, I think there's a time and place, but this is what goes back to technology. Like, this is what's, why I think there wasn't a CHRO, there wasn't a people operations person years ago. And it's not just startup culture. I think it's just corporate culture or whatever it is. So you asked me, like, what work have I done? My dad put me
to work that out for yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, from when I was 5, my dad has sent me to meditation camp. I'm a pretty calm person. Yeah, I used to go every summer. And ask Glenn, right? Like, it's like you have the rocks in your life, which for me are like yoga, meditation, having some me time. The second rock is like my son and my family. The third rock is like parents. And the fourth rock is work for me, right? But I'm not going to be good at work and work needs to recognize, which Instanda is, so great at doing that. If I don't spend 2 hours in the morning with my son, cook for him, make nourishing food, have time to me, a walk, I'm not going to do good at work. So when I come in, I'm charged. But like, because of phones, we are like answering emails right away. And I'm like so bad where I do pick up my phone and look at it first thing when I wake up, but I'm making it a point to like not do that and start being efficient again. And I think those basic things have to be like put in, like, I
think, but again, that goes back that you've worked that out. So I sat there at the end of 2019 and I was running through, and again, I only work for me. So my routines are what I create. And I was going through my routine and my year, and I do that. I wake up, I roll over, I check everything off. And then I am now putting my phone up, and I just went, you know what, I'm going to start work at 10. I could start at 9, but actually I like to go out and walk. You're having your time with your son. You're having that focused time. That's your time. I'm out walking, and I found starting then, oh my gosh, my whole day is set up differently. I'm just so much calmer and so much more in control.
That's interesting, right?
Mindfulness, right?
Yeah. You can do it for a one person, Katrina. So Neeta, how have you tried this? How do you implement that kind of self-awareness, or at least that kind of culture of people knowing how they set themselves up to perform at their best? Is that possible? Have you seen that done well? Have you done it yourself?
Well, I don't. So I've worked with a number of startups, right? Like over 10 startups. And then I've like advised a lot of companies on top of that. And it's not, you have to stay with a company for a long time to realize it needs to be done. And in the large corporates, like, you start understanding why things like learning and development, opportunities are there. People don't, participate in them, or they have access to like mental health lines if you need to like go talk to someone. But I mean, this is new where I'm with a company that's 100 people, even though I joined a 150 person company as my first corporate experience. And right now, I think it's being done on a one-on-one basis. I mean, Glenn, you've worked for this organization, and I really want to figure out how to make it available widely. Like, you know, I've gotten as far as putting like a Slack channel together called like personal development, where I throw up podcasts because I'm a massive believer. But again, I mean, you can't have everyone cut from the same fabric.
Yeah.
You know, you can't have people, otherwise it's not diverse, right? We can all be Indian and be different people, and that's diversity, right? So it's not that's what you want, but what you want is for people to realize the best version of themselves. Just because I like yoga might mean someone else likes boxing. The critical thing is you have employees that feel like they're healthy, that they're nourished, and that they're proud of what they're doing, right? And to me, I think those are attributes for like what I would look for. If a person doesn't have confidence, or a person just thinks the world is shit, right? Like, would I bring them on? Sure. And maybe I try to work with them if they're really good for the job. But if I was like building my own company, I think that matters a lot.
Yeah.
But then you need people who are good at what they do, right? And they might live their life in a different way. We all come from like different backgrounds that we can't even imagine. And it's just learning to be respectful. Well, okay, I tell everybody who knows me, who's worked with me knows, 90% of what happens in life is selfish. So if Glenn's in the office and I walk by, just like, psh, right? And he's like, wow, what's her problem? Meanwhile, I'm like, oh, you know, I just heard my son is sick and I'm like walking by, or I have a million things to do. So, you know, you can't take things personally. And that's a big issue, I think, that happens in small companies where like...
Oh, I'm going to correct you. I don't think selfish is the right word. I think we're self-absorbed, like, and again, not in a negative, like we're focused on what's going on in our world. Sorry, selfish to me has got such a negative connotation. But I absolutely get what you're meaning, because you walk past Glenn, he suddenly thinks he's done something wrong, and then you sit in there and there's energy. And of course, we've never done anything wrong, Glenn, because you are perfect. But in that smaller environment, where it's so crucial what the teams are up to and what they're doing, it's probably even more important.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, again, like, this is my opinion and my opinion only, and I probably am a bit like hippie crazy, you know what I mean? And like, there's like other kind of people out there who run like amazing startups with a different you know, mentality, and they might think like, wow, having smart people who just want to like tick off a to-do list is what's right for me. And, you know, that is great. Like, I love New York as a city to visit, but I couldn't live there. I need, you know, to be able to like walk to a park or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like personal. Like, some people don't want to work for a company that's doing things that are bad for the environment, and others don't care. Some people smoke and others don't. Right.
So it's so lovely to hear that, because it kind of goes against the grain of the whole, oh, well, you know, millennials, bless you all, I only want to work for companies that are doing good. And you're actually saying, you know what, people just do what people want to do, and people have their own choices. And you love yoga, I love walking, and it's all like, you know, I love, it's just so refreshing to hear that. We're actually running out of time.
Oh,
so I just,
wow.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to make sure, Glenn, as you set the topic, you got your questions out.
Yeah,
if you had any more for Neeta.
Yeah, I think it was the interesting piece that Neeta addressed around how do you interview for these kind of scaling businesses? It can be so challenging, because as she pointed out, the first 5 people will be very different, perhaps, to the second, the next set, the 10, then to the 20, then to the 50. And I think what she's illustrated clearly, and what we all believe is, yes, you can utilize a certain framework or some technology, but ultimately you're really trying to understand the individual and some of those kind of softer skills that you can't use AI to basically interview people on, right?
Yeah. No. And I do think, like, you know, for example, my approach at work isn't everybody do a essential skill, soft skill assessment. Like, that would be terrible, right? So usually there's 2 two types of interviews that happen. So myself, Glenn, Andy, we are really assessing for those softer skills and just saying like, does this person have curiosity? Do they at least understand what this team does? Have they done any kind of similar work to that? But then you're relying on the manager to make sure that they understand for their team, what are the gaps, what's missing, what would help, what do we need done? And I hope.
And how have you helped the hiring managers with that? Because I see that as a big fall down in most companies. Like literally, promote the best person, don't help them, let them die in the role. Is usually what would be going on. So how have you sort of sent them on any courses? Do you get an L&D person in? Like what do you get up to?
So where I am right now, even though it's been 3 years, I've done like 10, 20 hours a week because I didn't take maternity leave and just kind of like came back to work. So I'm trying to survive, right? And so, if it was up to me, there would be a framework, and it's something that we're working on right now. So managers, Glenn started the project for us where you write down, these are the values. Like you tell a manager, hey, at least ask 2 of those questions. But you would have the conversations with every manager, like what do you think is missing? I would suggest you ask this. So I think that's important, but I do think there definitely needs to be a framework built, particularly for a 100-person company. And then for training, we're offering people like learning and development subsidies. And I think every company should do that. Like even if you benefit a little bit, right? We have a clawback policy. We have a clawback policy where like if you leave and the course is like £1,000, well, you have to pay it back. But if it's less than that, hopefully you got something out of it. So
sorry to interrupt you. Sorry, I'm being very rude. Audra's appeared. Hello, Audra. Apparently your shirt is being very distracting to 3 people, including Audra. Glenn.
Oh, my shirt.
No, Glenn.
Oh, Nirvana.
Shirt, of course. I think you need to just pop up a bit and really show off your shirt. Audrey, you need to watch the beginning of the show where we gave you a shout out because of your overrunning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We are actually out of time, I'm afraid. I hate to tell you that. It goes really fast.
It goes too quickly.
Sorry, I put the topic together and I didn't even address it. Can I just say what the moral of that topic was? If anyone was listening for that. So why the right people matter. So one, if you work in a company, you're in management, know those right people will change, and it's fine to do that. And it's fine to have those conversations with people. And 2, the right people are the ones who, like I said, are learning the skills that they want to improve on while they're making contributions to you. And that could stop at some point. So just know that. Yeah. That's not really the right answer. It's not what I wanted to talk about. Let's just say that for now.
No, seriously. It's been a really good chat, though, because it does cover a whole span of experience and your experience. So
we did not talk about recruiting at all. Sorry.
No, actually we did. We did.
Yeah, we
talked about lots of areas of it. But I think what you really talked about is that people are people and what they want. And it's and that's the thing. And I think that there needs to be more flexibility and adaptability around that.
Yeah, but people are people, but like you need to be freaking organized as hell to make it efficient, and like that. And that's probably like my second skill set. So I love people, but like there is regiment put behind.
Absolutely.
So if you don't have that, you're also screwed. So like you have to be. So be thoughtful and then apply, right? So that's
the perfect way. So we are out of time. Next week, I had to look at the list. We have Dr. Tim Sparks. So talent is a person to value.
Tim in the house.
Talent is a person to value, not a resource to manage. Sounds like a brilliant topic. It's even worse when it's a capital. Anywho, sorry. 2 words that I can't stand together. Neeta, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And Glenn, well done. We shall see you all. Thank you very much for all your comments. There's been loads over there. Actually, there's just one coming in saying organised plus focused on the right things from Mr. Michael Cox. Thank you everybody for tuning in and being so chatty. We shall see you the same time next week, which of course is 3 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time and 10 a.m. Eastern. I know I get in trouble every week. See you all next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye. Bye.